should all be angry. We should all be very angry because we have seen this before. We have seen this across our entire country. And nothing's happened. We haven't seen people coming to the table to solve this. We see graphs in which, if you look at the graphs of how many guns and how many shootings, and you see that every other country around the world is in the bottom left portion of this graph, and America is in the top right. And there's a lot of issues about this. You know, we know that Republicans, they wear it as a badge of honor to be endorsed by the NRA. Every one of their commercials talks about their endorsement by NRA. They're holding up guns. Like, this is, again, something that we should be excited about. We lost 21 precious lives yesterday. We're about to get to the anniversary of Pulse. Hearing my good friend, Fred Guttenberg, and hearing my good friend, David Hogg, have to go on to MSNBC last night and to retell their stories is so gut-wrenching. And that we as Americans can't come together and say enough is enough. What are we doing here in America that we are allowing this to happen? Still today, Governor DeSantis has said nothing about this. Instead, he still wants to talk about open carry here in the state of Florida. Because that's the solution. That's how we resolve to make sure that our grandkids aren't going to school and being shot at, or people aren't going to the food store and being shot at. We, as Americans, have to expect more. 90% of Americans agree that universal background checks is at least the start of this.
Absolutely.
90%. And 50 people, 50, are standing in the way of 90% of Americans. So to our fellow Americans across the country, vote them out of office. You know, I have been involved in lots of these policy positions moving forward. You know, as you all know, I oversee the concealed weapons program in the state of Florida. And a promise that I made to the people of our state in 2018, after Parkland, is that we saw that my predecessor had allowed for 13 months background checks to not be done. And 292 individuals have fallen through the cracks. So I promised to kick the NRA out of my office, which we did. And to make sure that we had complete and thorough background checks for every single person who applied for a concealed weapon permit. We did that, and we have done that. But we also found significant loopholes in my program. That if an individual has a concealed permit in the state of Florida, and they go out of the state and are arrested or charged in another part of our country, because we can't retain fingerprints under the concealed program, we will never be notified. So that's a huge problem. And we put forth legislation in 2020 to fix that. And the bill went nowhere. I've been standing next to a lot of our legislators who are putting forth legislation to get rid of ghost guns. So that is what's happening is on the internet, that people are buying pieces and then putting them together at home. And to put, how scary is that? And to make sure that we are doing things to prevent that from happening here in the state. Also, we've seen legislation that have been proposed by our Democratic caucus members to actually do background checks on the purchasing of the ammo. A gun can't kill without ammo. And if we are allowing somebody, even in a ghost gun situation, and not having background checks on the ammo, that's at least a start. That is at least a start of what has to happen in our state. But we have two U.S. state senators here in the state of Florida that doesn't agree that anything needs to be done. And so a lot can be done. But here's the situation. We know that unfortunately we've got a Republican legislature who has a stronghold by the NRA. And we, though, have to figure out ways to either get them out of office or to find those reasonable Republicans that are willing to come to the table. Because the only way that we're going to be able to truly pass some of these reforms is by bipartisan support, because it has to happen. And so as long as the Republicans are refusing to talk to the Democrats about these issues, we're not going to be able to make headway. The other and last issue on this, to show too what else we have done, is when I first got into office, I sat down with my general counsel and I said, okay, what cases are we involved in? And give me a briefing. As also an attorney for 20 plus years at this point, I said, what else can we be doing? And so he gave me a briefing, and there was one case that we were defendants on that dealt with gun issues on a local level. That back in 2011, the legislature passed a very strict measure to not allow local governments to put any type of restrictions in place locally, even though if they found that there was a loophole, that it wasn't governed by what was happening at the state level, to put in different types of policies on the state and local level. 2011, they passed that law. A few years later, they added an additional element to it, that if a local elected actually passed something like this, they could be sued personally, outside of just their official position, but personally sued. So a lot of local governments got together and sued the state of Florida, the governor's office, attorney general, and the Commission of Agriculture because of our gun statutes that we oversee. I turned to my general counsel and I said, well, I agree with the plaintiffs. I don't want to be defended in this case. And so he says, well boss, we can't do anything about it right this second, but when given the opportunities, we will figure this out. And so that's exactly what we did. When the plaintiffs won at the lower level of the courts, and we knew that the Attorney General and the Governor were going to appeal the case, we called and said, we are not going to be part of the appeal. We are switching sides. And that is exactly what we have done. And we are now with the local governments. And unfortunately, we lost on appeal. But because of my position in that case now, I was the one who petitioned to the Supreme Court. So now the Supreme Court has oral arguments on June 9th because of my position in the case.